Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2024 loveresearch.info Symposium. I'm Adam Bode. Loveresearch.info is an initiative to support the love research community by disseminating research and information related to love and romantic relationships. It provides a monthly email update of the latest research and information, an annual symposium, such as this one, opportunities to advertise or promote on its website or in the monthly update, and student microgrants to help students present at conferences. There are currently 86 subscribers to the monthly update, which is a testament to the interest love and romantic relationships garners. This is the third symposium hosted by loveresearch.info, and we are lucky to have 10 presenters from 5 countries here today to present on their research. Things should progress pretty easily. Each presenter will have 12 minutes to present, followed by 3 minutes for questions. Presenters will share screen during their presentation and will stop sharing screen to answer questions. If people have questions, please raise your hand and I will call on you to ask your question once the presentation is finished. If you would prefer, you can write your question in the chat and I can read it out. Other than that, it should function like a stock standard Zoom meeting. We will start the second session as scheduled at 13:35 Eastern Daylight Time, but if things progress more quickly during the sessions than planned, we will just power through. We are recording, so keep that in mind and please have yourself muted during presentations. I also note this year we will have the loveresearch.info Student Presentation Award. 2 early career researchers will be assessing presentations and the winner will receive a $100 Amazon voucher as well as having their name recorded on the loveresearch.info website. And before we get going, there's just a little bit more housekeeping. I think Bianca has something to say.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here. I just wanted to give a quick plug for the special issue that both Adam Bode and I are co-editing. We're serving as editors for a special issue on advances and research on mating and love and attachment and relationships in general. So the journal has been kind enough to offer us an extension. So if any of you would like to submit something to the special issue, they are willing to extend the deadline. So just reach out to either Adam or I if you're interested.
Nice one. Thank you very much, Bianca. And before we get going, I just want to acknowledge that this year was a sad year for the love research community. We had the passing of 2 big names in love research. Hopefully you can all see that. Popular science writer and human mating researcher Dr. Helen E. Fisher died on 17 August 2024 at her husband's home in New York. Fisher was a biological anthropologist who had written several popular science and self-help books, including the New York Times bestseller, The Anatomy of Love. Fisher was best known among love researchers for advocating a theory that mammalian reproduction involves 3 independent emotion systems: lust, attraction or romantic love, and attachment. She co-authored 2 fMRI studies on romantic love and 1 on relationship dissolution. In recent years, Fisher held a position as research fellow at the Kinsey Institute, where she led the Singles in America study and co-authored 10 papers on the topic. She had also been the scientific advisor to the online dating website Match.com since 2005. Fisher was a charming and charismatic woman who brought the science of love to the world's living rooms. She was prolific in her media appearances and had more than 20 million views of her TED Talks. She opened many doors for love researchers. Fisher had many friends, and by all accounts, everyone who worked with her speaks highly of her. The love research community has lost an important advocate. Vale Helen Fisher. Professor Larry J. Young, pioneer in the field of oxytocin research, passed away while attending a conference in Japan in March this year. Larry was among the most impactful scientists in the field of behavioral neuroendocrinology and neuroscience. Larry was the William P. Timmy Professor of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the Emory University School of Medicine. He was also head of the Division of Behavioral Neuroscience and Psychiatric Disorders at Emory National Primate Research Center. Larry studied how genetic, cellular, and neurobiological mechanisms regulate complex social behavior, including social cognition and social bonding. His research focused heavily on the roles of the neuropeptides oxytocin and vasopressin in regulating the neural processing of social signals and social attachment. Larry was most popularly known for his research on prairie voles and was one of the progenitors of the theory that pair bonds evolved by co-opting mother-infant bonding. Larry also co-authored a popular science book on the topic of love and attraction in 2012 titled The Chemistry Between Us, Love, Sex, and the Science of Attraction. Larry's work has been a major contributor to contemporary theory about the evolution and mechanisms of romantic love and pair bonding. Larry was also known as a kind, enthusiastic, and supportive supervisor, colleague, and friend. My personal experience with Larry left me feeling positive about my own work and the future of the science of romantic love. Vale, Larry Young. All right, let's get on to the presentations. I believe Marta is up first, and I've got to attach a spotlight to Marta, I believe.
Thank you, Adam. Can you hear me? Standard question. Perfect, thanks.
How do I do a spotlight? Sorry.
3 dots, and you should have a option to spotlight or pin, or I don't know how it's called currently. You can make me a
start focus mode, perhaps?
Maybe, yeah, that should work.
No, that's not it.
No.
Look, you're very big on my screen.
Okay, if you can just pin me, anyone else can just pin me, because I'll be presenting in this view. Hopefully, it's large enough for you. Okay, can I take away the floor?
Go for it.
Thank you. Perfect. So thank you all for being here, and great thanks to Adam for organizing this symposium. I believe this is a great opportunity to meet with like-minded people and get to know the research we're all conducting. So I would like to talk about our research, which is a predictors of romantic love experiences from a cross-cultural perspective. And first of all, let's begin by saying what I will mean when talking about romantic love. So I'm going to talk about love within a romantic relationship. And once we know what we're going to be talking about, let's just focus on how we're going to measure love. And my research primarily focused on the triangular love scale, in a shortcut for TLS 15. This theory by Sternberg assumes that there are 3 components of love: intimacy, passion, and commitment. And here you can see the exemplary items from each of those subscales. So from intimacy, we have, I feel that my partner really understands me. From passion, we have, my relationship with my partner is passionate. And commitment, I view my relationship with my partner as permanent. So what we did, we validated 37 different linguistic versions of the TLS 15. So I encourage all of you, if you want to use the TLS in your research, please feel free, go ahead. These are only 15 items, hence the TLS 15. And you can check out the paper published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, or you can also come to my website, martakowal.com/TLC, where you can easily download each of those validated versions of the TLS with proved established equivalence of invariance. Okay, so now we know what we're going to focus about, how we're going to focus about it, TLS, romantic love. So the follow-up question is, what actually predicts romantic love? And this is something we focused on, and we chose some cultural and environmental factors that we believe might explain some of the variance in romantic love experiences around the world. So we focus on the 3 variables: collectivism, gender equality, and pathogen prevalence. And I'm not going to go into details on each of those measures. I believe they're quite self-explanatory. But if you're curious, you can ask me afterward. I can say a few more words about each of those. And importantly, we focus on a society and individual level. What does it mean? Because let's take an example of collectivism. We can quite confidently say that on average, citizens of Australia or United States are more individualistic than, say, people from India or China, right? I believe most of us would agree with such a statement. But then there are also some Americans and there are also some Chinese who are not alike their people from their countries. So we can find people from the United States that would be more collectivistic than an average citizen of their country or even China. So what we did, we measured both country level collectivism and individual level collectivism. We asked each of our participants some questions to measure their latent variable collectivism. Except for those cultural variables, we also focused on some demographic variables such as gender, age, relationship length, and socioeconomic status. So what we did then, we conducted a large-scale cross-cultural study, and with the help of an amazing team of over 400 scholars from all around the world, we managed to translate our survey into 45 different languages, and we collected over 100,000 people from all around the world. And importantly, among that group, there were over 61,000 people in romantic relationship, and hence who filled the TLS 15. Here you can see the map from where we had participants with at least 30 people. So as you can see on the Africa, we got a lot of white spots and not so many participants. And as always, I'm going to use this opportunity to invite you into our large, happy, cross-cultural team. If you want to be part of our projects, future projects, which we have plans for, because this wasn't our first cross-cultural study, and definitely it will not be the last one. So if you're interested, you can check and go to my website, martakowal.com/join, and there you can leave your email address, and I will surely then invite you to our cross-cultural next projects. There you can see not only leave your email address, but also say from which countries you have the opportunity to collect data. And I mentioned the African countries, but it does not limit to those countries. If you're also from other countries, go to the website, sign up, because we not only need people who collect data, but also who can contribute to, for instance, translations or even writing and analyzing the papers. Okay, so let's go to the interesting parts, which is the results. The first variable which we're going to focus on, pathogen prevalence. In general, we observed a negative relationship between pathogen prevalence and levels of romantic love. So the more pathogens in a given country and the more pathogenic diseases I suffered from in my life, the lower level of love I reported towards my partner. Which kind of makes sense, I believe. Gender equality. Regarding gender equality, on a country level, we observed that, again, higher country level gender equality, lower level of love. And this is one of the most surprising results we observe in our study. And if you have any ideas on the explanation of why did that happen, so why people from countries with higher gender inequality reported higher love levels, please feel free to share your thoughts with me, because I'm really curious, and we're still wrapping up this part of our survey, and we're still figuring out why did that happen. And also, on an individual level, we observed not so straightforward explanation, which is that people in general, the highest levels of love were reported by people who also believed in traditional gender role, right? So if I believe that men should have a final word in his family and women should be the one who are responsible for changing diapers and in general caring for children, then I also tended to report on average high levels of romantic love of all of those three components, and I mentioned intimacy, passion, and commitment. Though at the beginning, at the highest levels of gender equality, there was a small peak regarding commitment and intimacy, green and blue line, and also just a small peak in passion right over here. So again, results are quite surprising. Again, if you have any thoughts, please do share them with me. We have some potential explanation, but we're still trying to figure out what actually happened here, because our hypothesis was that the more gender equality, the more partners are equal in terms of the power within the relationship, we believe that that might be connected with higher levels of love, but that's not what the data showed. And a sneak peek, we also did a follow-up study, another cross-culture project on over 6,000 people from 50 countries, and we observed exactly the same pattern of results. So this is something truly to be explained. All right, collectivism. Here we observed counter evidence, because on a country level, on average, people from more individualistic countries, such as Denmark, on the left, you can see there, New Zealand, Netherlands, reported on average higher levels of love as compared to those from more collectivistic countries. But on an individual level, highest love levels were reported by those who adhered to collectivistic attitudes and views. So this kind of, again, makes sense, because the more I care and feel that my inner self is interdependent, especially towards my partner, then I might just act and experience higher levels of love. What about gender? How do you think? Who reported higher levels of love? Were it men or women? Because we limited our analysis only to those two genders. What do you think? I can leave a thought a second for you to think. You can answer in your thoughts, and I hope I'm going to surprise you, because we have those three components of love: intimacy, passion, and commitment. And in our study, actually, we did not observe any differences between females and males. So they reported on average similar levels of love, controlling for all other variables, which I'm so far mentioning. What about relationship length? I believe I'm not going to surprise you saying that all of those three components were related to intensity of romantic love a person experienced, but the relationships were not the same, such as the highest peak with relationship length was for commitment. The more time I spent into a romantic relationship, the higher level of commitment I tend to experience. The same goes for intimacy, though this peak was much, much less severe and much less spectacular. What was spectacular was the decrease in passion observed with a relationship length. So the highest levels of passion were experienced by people at the beginning of their romantic relationship, those experiencing early stage love, which I believe also nicely converges with all of our previous theories. What about age? Here the situation was quite straightforward, because all of those three components were negatively related with time, such as the older I am, probably the lower level of love I experienced. Though again, I don't want to overgeneralize and just briefly mention that there were people of higher age who also reported high levels of love. So it's not like there are no chances for us to experience high levels of love once we get older. This is a hope for us all, I hopefully believe. What about socioeconomic status? So here's a spaghetti plot with average country associations of individual level socioeconomic status. And in general, we observe that the higher status, the higher level of reported love, which also we can refer to daily stresses a person experiences due to socioeconomic and financial struggles they experience, which again kind of makes sense. Summary and takeaway message. I have many things to say about love and how it affects our lives, and which factors predict high levels of love and which factors predict lower levels of love. But I'm going to leave you with a takeaway message I always tend to repeat, and to which I strongly believe from my perspective, that love is simply awesome. It's changed my life. Definitely, my life became much better once I started to love the person I'm currently in love with, which is my husband. And I hope that we can learn more about love and how it affects our daily life and which factors predict the romantic love, also from a cross-cultural perspective. I'm going to end with a big, huge shout out and thank you to all of our amazing collaborators, because this study wouldn't be possible without the efforts of each and every one person, and also participants who devoted much time into our study. And a special thanks to my PhD supervisor, former Professor Piotr Sorokowski. He's the one who's an expert in cross-cultural research, and he's the one from whom I learned a lot how to conduct such studies. I'm also about to say that I'm supported by the Foundation for Polish Science START Scholarship, which I'm also receiving and I'm really grateful for. And also that this study was a part of a research project funded by the National Science Center. Thank you, and feel free to ask any questions. And if you want to join our family, you can scan this QR code. It will send you to my website, where you can leave an email address. You can also find me on Twitter. You can also send me an email just saying hi. And I always love to collaborate with new people. And if you want to join forces, then please go ahead. Thank you so much.
Chuck, looks like you've got a question.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. I was thinking that the more independent countries having higher levels of love. I'm thinking about Meikita's comments about relational mobility. In countries where there's high relationship mobility, which tends to be the more, once emphasizing individualism, because relationships change a lot, you need to express love a lot more, affection a lot more, to make sure you hang on to these relationships. Whereas in collectivist societies, generally you have these long-standing friendship patterns, relatives you've been with forever. You don't need to express affection so much because you can take it for granted. So I think relational mobility plays a role in that difference.
Thank you, Shaq, for this comment. In fact, I've never checked the relationship mobility, because I believe there's a country measure of relational mobility. But
yeah,
what your thoughts are exactly one of my hypotheses, which I want to follow up in a field study, for instance, in some remote places, and to check if, for instance, some of the islands in the Pacific Ocean, people who are confined to the same space, like a small village with, for instance, 100 inhabitants, how do they experience love and how it differs? And my idea was similar to yours, actually. Maybe we can join forces on that project and to see, because we have all the same people all the time, that maybe, you know, we don't need to advertise and signal our high love, and people from places with high mobility, more people would just experience a different level of love. Thank you.
Any more questions? Fabio.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marta. It was very interesting. Actually, I have a question about your interpretation of, I don't know if you have an idea of the data about gender inequality country, in terms of where people are, where there is less gender equality society, there is less romantic love. What do you think about that? Did you think about some, you know, some, yeah, hypothesis about that?
Yeah, this is like one of the highest, the most secret things I can think of, because on the one hand, one of the hypotheses we have is that romantic love we know and love within a romantic relationship we know might be truly embedded into patriarchal view of the world, such
Hmm.
as men, the protectors, even in this benevolent sexist way, like men want to protect their women and, for instance, provide for them. And this general view might be strongly linked to how we perceive romantic love and how we lived to think about romantic love. And in general, people who, for instance, men who believe they're macho, they're really masculine, they know that they have to be fierceless lovers, right? And the women need to be devoted and 100% committed to their man. That might be connected to our perception of romantic love, but I'm not 100% sure that that is the case. So we definitely need some follow-up studies. We have some plans for instance, experimental studies in which we would prime gender inequality, traditional gender roles, and see how people would react to this prime and what kind of levels of romantic love they would report. This is something we have in mind, and definitely, and I would love to also hear your idea if you have any other
Yeah,
explanation.
my idea, Marta, was exactly thinking about social norms and how people can. There is an adoration of social norms. So I was exactly guessing what you say. If I think that loves, I think there is even some different idealization of romantic love when I have gender stereotypes that are more amplified. So yeah, maybe just see if gender stereotypes and norms in social norms can play a big role, I think. But this is to test, and it's very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That's all we've got time for. Thanks very much, Marta.
We can follow up, Chak, via email.
Next, we've got Patili.
You're muted, by the way.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. I'll just share my screen and we'll get started. Can you see my presentation?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Great. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be among like-minded researchers, and it's wonderful that this type of infrastructure on love research is finally coming together and starting to exist, because at least I felt somewhat lonely in my work. So it's great to see that these communities are forming. I also want to thank Adam for remembering Professors Fisher and Young, whose work has also been quite inspirational for me. So today I just want to walk you through a study that we did at Aalto University with my colleagues, which was published earlier this autumn in Cerebral Cortex journal. So this is an fMRI study about different types of love. As a word of disclaimer, I'm not a neuroscientist myself. I'm a philosopher, but I've been collaborating for the past few years with neuroscientists at Aalto University, studying different types of love. All right. So most of the previous research in this field has focused on romantic and parental love. Whereas if we look at linguistic communities and the way the word love can be used in different contexts, we know that subjective feelings of love can range from maternal affection and romance to many different kinds of relationships with different beings, to admiration of natural beauty, or love for the transcendent, or love for friends, and so on. However, little is known about the neural mechanisms of these different types of love beyond romantic and parental types. So what we did in this research, we investigated the hemodynamic responses in the human brain associated with feelings of love for 6 different types of objects using fMRI. So we had the targets of romantic love, parental love, then we had love for friends, we had compassionate love for strangers, we had love for non-human pets, and we had love for beautiful nature. And we asked which brain areas are activated during feelings of these different types of love. Which areas are common to feelings of love for different types of objects, and how do the areas differ based on the type of objects? Based on previous research, for instance, Fisher's research and Young's research, and Bartels and Tseki's research, among others, we hypothesized that the activation of the subcortical reward system would be a common substrate underlying these various feelings of love. We also hypothesized that feelings of love for different objects might be differentially modulated by social brain networks, depending on the type of relationship, whether it's social or not, and that the degree of reward system activation could be associated with the closeness of the affiliative bond in question, i.e. that closer relationships might activate the reward system more strongly. We had 55 Finnish participants, which is not a huge sample, but in a single fMRI study, it is by far, I believe, the largest in neuroscience of love thus far, just as a single experiment. These were native Finnish-speaking people, healthy adults, on average about 40 years old, who self-reported to have at least one child and to currently be in a loving couple relationship. The mean duration of the relationships was slightly over 10 years. As stimuli, which we used to induce these feelings of love, we used short pre-recorded narratives of loving everyday encounters, which always ended with the subject feeling love for something. So they were prompted to feel love for different objects. And these stimuli were played to the subjects in randomized order through earphones during fMRI. Each of these short stories was followed by a 10-second silent imagery period, during which the task of the subjects was to immerse themselves in the feeling elicited by the story. So they were told beforehand to do their best to try to immerse themselves and to feel the type of love in question. And then we contrasted these love narratives with the brain activation from neutral narratives, which contain no strong emotion. I'll just give you a couple of examples of the types of narratives that we played to the subjects. So, for instance, a narrative on romantic love could be something like, this is one example. You are in the laundry room with your partner. They are loading the washer with laundry, and suddenly you remember what a lovely person your partner is. You feel love for them. And a story about love for nature could be, you are at your cottage in the middle of the woods. Around you is the greenness of trees. The air is fresh and the wind blows gently through the birch leaves. You feel love for nature. And an example of a neutral story, you are sitting in the car going to work. The weather forecast on the radio says that the mild weather is not about to change for the next few days. There's not much going on at the workplace either. And here are sort of the main results that we got from the study. We also gathered some behavioral data, but this I think this image will give you the basic idea of what's going on. So we clearly see that feelings of love for different objects are differentially modulated by brain areas associated with reward and social processing. Maybe just if you look at the upper left hand corner the audio condition for romantic and parental love, and then compare it with the stranger condition and the pet and nature conditions, you get the basic idea of what's going on. What we found was that in all types of interpersonal love, the areas often associated with the so-called theory of mind network, which includes the temporoparietal junction, precuneus, and the frontal cortex, are activated. And then at the sort of center of the brain, the reward system, the rostral brainstem, including ventral tegmental area, the PAG, ventral portion of the basal ganglia area, is also activated. But the strength of this activation varies very much according to the strength of the attachment relation in question. So again, if you look at the love for strangers condition and see the difference with the closer affiliations. So based on this, we can say that feelings of interpersonal love appear to be modulated by activity in brain regions associated with reward, according to the biobehavioral salience of the interpersonal relationship in question. And we can see that these different types of interpersonal affiliation form a continuum from closer affiliative bonds to more distant relationships according to the degree of subcortical and cerebellar activation. As contrasted to the neutral stories, the love for pets and love for nature involved much less activation. They do activate, in particular, the anterior cingulate cortex, which is involved in a myriad of functions, but has been associated with reward, social cognition, and salience in meta-analytical studies. Love for beautiful nature. Also, this was a very nice finding, a sort of sanity check for us, that the love for beautiful nature activated the so-called parahippocampal areas, which are associated with visual stimuli and have been associated particularly with landscapes, with viewing landscapes. The activations we found during the imagery period were mainly similar, but weaker than in the audio condition. And in particular, the temporal and parietal lobes deactivated across types of love. The remaining activations that you see on the imagery side can be thought to represent in a way, the mere imagined feelings of love for the objects, such that these activations are discounting the naturalistic phenomenological context of the audio narratives. Before concluding, by coincidence, half of our subjects were pet owners and half were non-pet owners. So we were able to make a comparison between these two groups. And the only condition where we found a difference was the love for pets condition. And this image shows the brain regions activated more strongly in pet owners than participants without pets in the love for pets versus control contrast. And this is really interesting because the blobs you see there are especially the precuneus and the so-called temporoparietal junction, which are key parts of the signature of the theory of mind network. So we can say, based on this, that it appears that for pet owners, love for pets is neurally more resemblant of interpersonal love than for participants without pets. I think this was a very interesting result. All right, to conclude. So these results reveal how neural activity during feelings of love depends on the object of love. Interpersonal love recruited social cognition brain areas in the temporoparietal junction and midline structures significantly more than love for pets or nature. In pet owners, love for pets activated these same regions significantly more than in participants without pets. Love in closer affiliative bonds was associated with significantly stronger and more widespread activation in the brain's reward system than love for strangers, pets, or nature. And what I think, in a way, what these results offer is one point of view, or one way perhaps to help explain why love is used in so many different contexts, and why we feel stronger affections for close ones compared to strangers, even though the underlying brain processes of affection are the same for all types of interpersonal relationships, and why it makes sense to call even these weaker feelings love, such as in the philosophical or religious traditions such as Christianity or Buddhism, where we speak of neighborly love or loving kindness for all beings. So in a way, I hope that our results are can help explain what's going on with this type of phenomenon. To remember Fisher, and especially perhaps in this context Young's work, it appears that from the perspective of functional neuroarchitecture, this amazing complexity of the human phenomenon of love appears to be emerging from and building on, we can say, on these fundamentally adaptive neurobiological attachment systems that humans share with other mammals, such as prairie voles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patili. Very interesting. Do we have any questions? Chuck.
Yeah, I was wondering, would the brain areas be similar if you were talking about a friend? So we're talking about, I'm thinking about comparisons of liking and love. To what extent are they similar neurologically, and what extent are they different neurologically?
It appears that the areas are similar, and of course, I mean, what can vary between individuals is whether you think that the subjective affectionate relationship that you have with a friend is one of love. And here intuitions can differ, but for many people it does make sense, the notion that we can love our friends. And here we specifically aimed to induce the feeling of love for the friend, and I believe these results correspond quite well with what we know from other studies about what happens in the brain when people are, for instance, viewing photographs of their friends. It's very similar to romantic love and parental love, but slightly weaker, but then again, a lot stronger than when the object is a stranger.
I've got a question. I'm curious about where this leads in terms of future research. Do you have any ideas to extend or expand upon this, or any guidance for other researchers that might?
I'm very interested in the avenues for cross-cultural research in this area. Our sample population was Finnish people. We are looking into possible collaborations with certain East Asian universities. We have also measured subjective bodily feelings associated with love in another study, also using a convenience sample with a Finnish population. So I think for me personally, to understand how universal across the human species these activation patterns really are, and what kind of culturally mediated differences might emerge if we would do a similar study in say East Asia or Africa or different parts of the world.
One more question, if I can. So I noticed your romantic love condition was talking about love generally for a romantic partner, rather than what some people call passionate love, which happens at the beginning stages of a romantic relationship. Do you have any idea about like drawing on other research, how this relates to your current findings?
Sorry, how what relates to our
How
current
romantic
findings?
love, what you would find in romantic love, because there's been about 20 neuroimaging studies of that, how that compares with, say, the love you found in your romantic love condition?
Well, I mean, I think our results corroborate the previous findings, according to which the subcortical reward system is a key player here. What is interesting is that most of these previous studies on romantic love using fMRI have used photographs or videos as stimuli. Here, we are using a different type of modality. We are using audible narratives. So it's I think it's quite nice that we are getting so similar results. Often the romantic love studies have used the friend group as a contrast group, whereas we have the neutral stories as a control condition. So what we get is a sort of more a whole brain image of what's going on. So we get the robust activation in the social brain regions, which are sort of drop out when if you contrast the romantic love with the friendship, because these areas will be the same. So that's the reason why the previous studies on romantic love have found mainly the subcortical reward system.
Thank you
But
very
yeah,
much.
it's the same with the prairie voles. So it's the same stuff that's going on in the brain.
Very interesting. All right, we might leave Patili there. Next, we've got Carissa, whom I think might not be here. Is Carissa here? No, in which case, can we move on to Ben?
Can everybody hear me? Is my microphone working?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Hello, my name is Ben Gelbart. I'm a 6th-year PhD candidate at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And today I'm going to be talking about some of my research on the signaling functions of love. So existing research suggests that love is ubiquitous around the world, but it's not entirely clear what, if anything, love is designed to do. For decades, research that has attempted to answer this question has primarily been focused on one hypothesis, the commitment device hypothesis. And the idea of the commitment device hypothesis is that mating markets, relationship or dating markets, are in some ways analogous to rental markets. So in a market of purely rational actors, if you're imagining a rental market with purely rational tenants and purely rational landlords trying to maximize profit, the market can very quickly become unstable. So a rational landlord would evict a tenant each and every time someone was willing to pay slightly more in rent, and a rational tenant would move every time a slightly more affordable apartment became available. So you might move in and then a week later find an apartment that's slightly cheaper and leave. But all this instability, this eviction and moving, would lead to a commitment problem. In a market of purely rational actors, landlords and tenants can't trust each other to remain committed. And so to solve this problem, the parties are thought to require what economists call a commitment device, something that disincentivizes the pursuit of alternatives. And in the case of a rental market, this comes in the form of a rental lease. So each party signs a lease that's costly to break. And what that does is it disincentivizes the pursuit of alternative rental relationships. It disincentivizes tenants from pursuing other landlords and landlords from pursuing other tenants. And so both parties suffer a potential loss. They can't switch to a better alternative if that alternative becomes available. If I find an apartment that's slightly cheaper, I can't switch. But both parties also get a benefit. Because I'm willing to sign a lease, I am more desirable as a candidate compared to other potential relationships you could choose. So for instance, if I'm a landlord, I'm more likely to choose a tenant who I know is going to stick around over a tenant who could leave tomorrow. And the idea of the commitment device hypothesis is that the same problem emerges on a mating market. So purely rational agents would leave their partner each and every time a superficially more desirable person was also showing mutual interest. So if I'm married, or if I enter a relationship and then someone moves in next door the following month who's slightly more attractive or kind or ambitious than my partner, I should leave them for that person if I'm a purely rational actor trying to maximize partner type desirability. But of course, many of the benefits of relationships require sustained long-term commitment. And so according to the commitment device hypothesis, love evolved to solve this commitment problem by operating as a psychological commitment device, a commitment device that's sort of analogous psychologically to the leasing example. And so before I continue, I just want to include this obligatory slide, the definition of love. So I'm defining love here as a higher order emotion that's encompassing multiple subcomponents. It's including things like passion, intimacy, and/or commitment, and potentially other subcomponents as well. To summarize, the commitment device hypothesis suggests that love is designed for psychologically disincentivizing the pursuit of romantic alternatives. And love in turn should signal, is thought to signal this psychological shift to a partner. Now, love could do this in multiple ways. Love, for example, could decrease attraction to alternatives. It could increase your guilt about the thought of pursuing alternatives, and so on. The commitment device hypothesis doesn't specify a specific proximate avenue through which this is accomplished. But to qualify as a commitment device in the classic sense, love just has to do two key things. It has to cause some kind of a psychological shift that disincentivizes pursuing alternatives, and it has to signal this shift to a partner. Now, the commitment device hypothesis is very popular and it's received a fair amount of empirical support, but we think that there's a key problem that has yet to be addressed. Internal psychological shifts are easy to fake. So if anyone can claim that they really love their partner or that they're going to stay committed forever, that's a very easy signal to fake. And so there's nothing preserving the credibility of that signal if all love is doing is changing an internal psychological state in me. And so in evolutionary biology, biologists have created what's called signaling theory to understand signaling systems not only in humans, but across species. And one of the key predictions of signaling theory is that potential receivers of signals will not evolve adaptations for responding to that signaled information unless the information on average is honest. So I shouldn't, as an animal, if I'm responding to, bared teeth, I shouldn't respond to that information if it doesn't actually mean anything. If on average it's dishonest, it doesn't actually indicate aggression, I shouldn't respond to that information. And signals can only remain honest if they're more costly for cheaters to produce than honest signalers. So a great example of this is the picture I have here is a deer engaging what's called stotting behavior. Stotting behavior is when prey animals will jump repeatedly in the presence of a predator. What this is doing is it's a costly signal that you are able to run away very effectively. If you're able to waste energy jumping when you might have to run for your life, that's a very costly but honest signal that you're likely able to outrun the predator. A sickly individual, for example, can't afford to waste the energy jumping when it might need to actually run for its life. And so it is actually the case that prey animals that engage in the stotting behavior get chased by predators less often than those that don't. It's an honest signal. So if love is designed to signal commitment, signals of love can only be credible if they're more difficult for cheaters to produce than honest signalers. In other words, if it's more difficult for someone who doesn't actually intend to stay in the relationship to produce a love signal than someone who does. And we suggest that signals of love may be costly for cheaters by reducing the likelihood of successfully pursuing a romantic alternative. So for instance, love may motivate behaviors which make the pursuit of alternatives more costly, more difficult, etc. It might motivate behaviors like lavish gift giving, time-consuming endeavors like writing a song for a partner or a poem, and so on. And what's critical here is that we are going to argue that these love acts might not be signaled not only to your partner, they might not be signaled exclusively to a partner. They might be signaled to romantic alternatives themselves as well. And in turn, this might decrease their likelihood of attempting to pursue you. So if acts of love genuinely decrease the likelihood that romantic alternatives will pursue you, these acts may honestly signal commitment to your partner. Only an individual who really intends to remain committed can afford to dissuade alternatives from attempting to pursue them. So to illustrate what we're saying here, imagine we have two people and some observing romantic alternatives. This person, let's say, wrote a song for their partner. This is, in our view, sending a signal of disinterest to romantic alternatives. They're saying that I'm committed to this relationship. And that signal of disinterest, in turn, is going to make their signal of commitment to their partner more genuine. And so we refer to this hypothesis as the signaling to alternatives hypothesis. And the idea here is that love might not be psychologically disincentivizing the pursuit of alternatives. So for instance, it might not be decreasing my attraction to romantic alternatives. Instead, what we think love is doing is disincentivizing alternatives from pursuing oneself. It makes alternatives less interested in pursuing me. And so one question you might ask, if we don't think that love is causing these internal psychological changes, is how does the commitment problem get solved in the first place? And one potential explanation for this is that mutual changes in love over time may make a partner genuinely more valuable to make partners genuinely more valuable to each other relative to available alternatives. So to return to our example here, imagine that one partner sends a signal of commitment to their partner and disinterest to alternatives. This might in turn motivate their partner to send a signal of commitment in response and disinterest of their own to those alternatives. And then because my partner has now become more uniquely committed to me, they are now less interested. They are now less likely to be pursued by alternatives. That makes them uniquely valuable to me, which in turn might make me send a stronger signal of commitment in response. And of course, this can continue. My partner might then send a signal back to me, and so on. And over time, as these commitment signals escalate, the two partners may become increasingly locked in to the relationship. It may be increasingly hard for each of them to pursue an alternative as opposed to one another. And so each partner might be genuinely more valuable to each other relative to available alternatives over time. And so the signaling to alternatives hypothesis makes a few key predictions. The first prediction is that romantic alternatives should detect and respond to signals. So if love is designed for signaling commitment, acts of love toward a partner should decrease the interest of alternatives in pursuing the performer. And the second prediction that's most critical, and that's most what you can think of as the more risky prediction, is that signaler and receiver responses should show a tight correspondence. So the more diagnostic a behavior is of love, the more strongly it should decrease the interest of observing alternatives. So to test this question, we recruited 253 single participants through Prolific. Participants were shown 23 potential love acts adapted from BUS, the love act scale. So one of the items here, for instance, is writing a poem, like I mentioned before. And participants were randomly assigned to one of three conditions. In the pursuit and attraction conditions, participants rated the extent to which their interest in pursuing a potential romantic interest or their attraction to that romantic interest would change if they saw that person directing a love act, the love act in question, towards someone else. So, for instance, if I saw someone else who I was interested in write a poem for a person that they may or may not be interested in, to what extent would that make me more or less attracted to that person and more or less likely to pursue that person? In the love condition, participants instead rated their confidence that the person performing the behavior was really in love with the intended target. So if I saw someone write a poem for someone or write a song for someone, how likely would I be how confident would I be that they're in love with the person that they wrote the song for or wrote the poem for? The responses were rated on a scale from 1 to 7. We had anchors like I would feel much less attracted to my romantic interest or I would feel much more. So what did we find? We found that estimated love was, in fact, a significant predictor of attraction to the target and also interest in pursuing the target. So you can see on the graph here, we have love diagnosticity on the x-axis, and then changes in the likelihood of pursuing that target on the y-axis. You can see this clear negative relationship. What's interesting is that although we used a between subjects design, the item level correlations were nearly perfect. So if you go item by item, you take the average attraction ratings, for instance, and the average love diagnosticity ratings, you find nearly perfect correlation. So we find 0.91 for pursuit ratings and 0.85 for attraction ratings. So in other words, the extent to which an action was diagnostic of love on average showed a nearly 1-to-1 correspondence with average attraction ratings and average pursuit ratings. And so the results support the signaling to alternatives hypothesis. Observing a love act directed towards someone else decreases attraction toward and interest in pursuing the performer. And the extent to which an act was diagnostic of love showed a nearly 1-to-1 correspondence with decreases in interest and attraction. And so these results suggest that love might be designed for producing these costly but honest signals of commitment. And they also open the door to the possibility, they don't, of course, suggest this directly, but they open the door to the possibility that love might not be psychologically disincentivizing my own pursuit of alternatives, but it might be instead disincentivizing alternatives from pursuing me. As I mentioned before, mutual signals of love over time might render a partner genuinely more valuable relative to romantic alternatives over time. So you might not need this sort of artificial psychological shift where your sort of love is sort of artificially suppressing for instance, attraction to alternatives. That might not be necessary if there's this sort of cyclical process where over time partners become increasingly locked in to the relationship through this cycle of mutual signaling. So I'd like to thank my collaborators, Daniel Connery Beam and Katie Walter, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Marta.
Thank you, Ben, for your presentation. I have two questions. First is like, what about this cultural phenomena of the man is getting more exciting to pursue if he is taken? I don't know if you're familiar with it. Like Hollywood movies are full of such things. Like, you know, man is looking for a woman, and then once he's like engaged in some committed relationship, then he starts to get a lot of proposals from potential females. So I'm curious about your thoughts on it. And the second question, from a cross-cultural perspective, have you thought about different signs of love, signals of love, not only in the Western world, where, for instance, writing a poem or writing a song would be highly perceived as so, but also in other cultures? Because I'm curious about it, but of course, I know you haven't studied it. And you did not present such results, but I was just wondering if you have some thoughts on that too. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So to your first question, I think there's a difference between the abstract knowledge that someone is in a relationship and the knowledge that they're sending these potentially very diagnostic signals of love. So you could be in a relationship, for instance, and not be particularly in love with your partner. I think there's sort of two competing effects here. One is that, you know, if a partner is chosen by someone, if an individual is chosen by someone else, that could be a signal of their value as a potential partner. Someone else has already vetted them and chose them. But then there's this sort of additional effect, which is that if they're really genuinely in love with that person, they're not very likely to you know, they're not very likely to reciprocate your advances. So I think both phenomena could sort of be true. It could be that the abstract knowledge that someone is in a relationship could make them more desirable, but at the same time, seeing a very, you know, a clear act of love directed towards someone else could still reduce my interest in them by suggesting that they're just very unlikely to reciprocate. And then to your second question about cross-cultural extensions, yeah, we would love to do this in other countries. We actually have a student we're working with who's going to be doing an honors thesis on an extension of this. And one of the things we have been talking about is a cross-cultural, not at the level that you did with 90 countries, but one or two other countries is one of the things that we've been discussing. So yeah, we definitely like to look at that in the future.
Victor.
Hello, Victor Krandershev here. I had a question about scatter plot. You know that your scatter plot very scattered. And you know that I see that probably statistically you found the tendency, but you know the scatter is so huge that there is some question, the question that how high standard deviation and how actually these represent the general tendency.
Yeah, so there is still variation. So for instance, individual people might disagree, for instance, on how diagnostic is some very specific action, how diagnostic is writing a song for someone. People might disagree, but I think what's particularly compelling is that when you average the diagnosticity ratings and you average the attraction and pursuit ratings, you see this incredibly tight correlation. So it is the case that when you just include this is essentially every single data point, every rating from every participant in this plot. And so when you include all of those in a single plot, it does look a little bit messier. And of course, there is a lot more variability and noise and so on. But when you sort of average it together to get rid of the noise, you see this very close correspondence on average between attraction and pursuit ratings on the one hand and love diagnosticity ratings on the other hand. But yeah, that is a great point that there's still individual variation. Not every single person agrees, for instance, that not every person might agree, for instance, that writing a song for someone is particularly diagnostic of love, for instance.
Okay, one comment and suggestion related to this. I think that research overall and research in love very much in the trap of averaging everything. I think that it would be very good to turn to some typological approach. There is different types of participants, and they may be different, and averaging everything actually not the best approach. So I would just suggest to select some kind of typology of your participants.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It would definitely be interesting to try and explore why do these diagnosticity ratings differ. For instance, what are the sort of underlying dimensions that participants are getting at when they're trying to assess how diagnostic something is of love? I think that's definitely something that we would be interested in looking at for sure. I will also say that the slopes, when you leave the data unstandardized, the slopes were also very close to 1 as well. So in other words, a 1-point increase in love diagnosticity was associated with approximately 1-point change in pursuit motivations and attraction ratings. So the slope there is also relatively close to 1 when you leave the data unstandardized. But I do agree that we should definitely look at why is it that there's this variation? Why does not everyone agree on whether something is diagnostic of love, for instance?
Thank you.
Very interesting. All right, thanks, Ben. And now we might move on to Sandra.
So my name is Sandra Langeslag. I'm an associate professor at the University of Missouri in St. Louis, and I'm very excited to tell you about my latest research on limerence. So the term limerence was coined in 1979 in a book by Dorothy Teneff, and she described this as a particular form of love that is accompanied by a desire for reciprocity, accompanied by both ecstasy and despair, accompanied by lots of obsessive thinking about the limerence object or the person people feel limerence for, and is then accompanied by distraction from other things. And she also specifically says that it is a normal condition, not a pathological form of love. Since she coined this term, there has not been a lot of scientific research on this form of love, but it has recently been gaining lots of popularity in the regular media. And people are using this term to describe all sorts of different experiences. And so the question becomes is, what exactly is limerence and how does it relate to other forms of love that are better defined in the scientific literature? So in this study, I wanted to test how lay people define limerence. I also wanted to ask what the experience of limerence entails. So how does it make people feel and how does it maybe overlap with other forms of love? And then I also wanted to know if people can change how much limerence they feel for someone using cognitive strategies. So we created an internet survey and people that were 18 years or older could complete it, and they did not have to currently experience limerence for anyone. But we posted this Qualtrics survey in online limerence communities to capture participants that probably were likely to experience limerence and or had some other reason to be interested in this phenomenon. For example, maybe because of previous experiences with this type of love. We collected data from 485 participants. Not all of them finished the entire survey, so we don't have 485 data points for every dependent variable. But on average, these participants were about 35 years old, and we had a nice range of people ranging from 18 to 71 years old. And most participants were women. So we asked them questions about demographics. We asked them about their definition of limerence, and then I had a bunch of questions that try to get at how does limerence make them feel. I also had them complete the infatuation and attachment scales. This is a questionnaire that separately measures the level of infatuation, which is sometimes also called passionate love or romantic love, and then also the attachment scale, which measures the intensity of attachment or companionate love. And then finally, on Qualtrics, I had them do a regulation task. So I got a baseline rating of how much limerence they felt right now and also the valence, so how pleasant or unpleasant they felt right now. And then I had them answer a couple questions that made them think about negative aspect of the person they felt limerence for. So that's called negative reappraisal of limerence object. And then I asked them again, how much limerence do you feel and how unpleasant or pleasant do you feel right now? We had them complete positive reappraisal of the limerence object. So made them think about positive aspects of the person. And then we also had them do distraction. So we asked them some questions that made them think about other things. And we counterbalanced the order of these 3 regulation strategies between participants. So my very first question to participants was, what is your definition of limerence? And I had them type their answer. Now, unfortunately, so this study is very much in progress. So we closed data collection, but we're still analyzing the data. I only started analyzing last week. So this is very much in progress. And so unfortunately, I haven't had a chance yet to look at this particular question. I also asked them, in your opinion, to what extent does limerence overlap with, and then I had these 10 terms that I thought some people may think would overlap with limerence or not. And so you see that participants thought limerence overlapped a lot with infatuation, addiction, and unrequited love, and less with, for example, love in general, or mania, or trauma, or self-esteem. I also asked them, do you currently feel limerence for someone? 80% of the participants said, yes, I do. 10 said no, and 10% said, I don't know for sure. On average, people had been feeling limerence for 3 years or even longer, with a wide range of like a week or so until 26 years. So limerence can be very long lasting. I asked them, are you in a relationship with this person? 75% said no, and I've never been. 20% said no, I'm not in a relationship with this person that I feel limerence for, but I have been in the past, so it was an ex-partner. And only 5% said, yes, I'm in a relationship with the person I feel limerence for. I asked them, do you wish you were in a relationship with this person? And then the majority said yes, but still 22% said no, I do not wish that. I even asked them, are you in a romantic relationship with someone else than the person you feel limerence for? And about half said yes. So these people were in a romantic relationship with someone, yet they felt limerence for someone else. I asked them, how much limerence do you feel for this person? I gave them a slider that could range from 0 to 100. They put it on average at 87. So that's a high intensity. And if I look at the correlation between this limerence intensity with the infatuation and attachment scales, I found a positive correlation with both scales, but even more so with infatuation. So there was a positive correlation between limerence intensity and infatuation or passionate love, and also, but slightly lower, between limerence intensity and attachment or companionate love intensity. I asked them, how unpleasant and how pleasant does experiencing limerence make you feel? And you can see that the question about how unpleasant was hugely skewed. And so a lot of participants said, this limerence is making me feel extremely unpleasant. Whereas the question, or the distribution on the question for how pleasant does it make you feel was a lot more uniform, or maybe even bimodal, where like sort of half the participants said it's not making me pleasant at all, and then another half said it's making me quite pleasant. There was a negative correlation between how unpleasant and how pleasant limerence made people feel. So that suggests that it either made them feel unpleasant or pleasant, but not both at the same time. I asked them, how much of your time do you spend thinking about this person? Again, with a slider ranging from not at all to all the time. And it turns out that the response was about 74%, which is a lot. And it's also even higher than what I see in other studies on love. So in some of my previous studies, and from other people too, it's about 60 or 65%. So 74% to me seems even higher than what I found in previous studies. I asked them, how do you feel about thinking about this person? And they scored a little or significantly less than the midpoint of the scale, which means that on average it bothered them. And you can see here again, it's slightly it's skewed, or definitely not normally distributed, where it bothers a lot of people that they think about their limerence object. And then some people also enjoy it. But on average, it bothers them more than they enjoy it. And people also report that it distracts them from other things such as school or work. I asked them, do you wish you experienced more or less limerence for this person? And a whopping 93% said, I wish I experienced less limerence for this person. Only 1% said, I wish I experienced more. And 7% says, no, I feel the right amount of limerence for this person. I don't wish to change that. So that's where that regulation task comes in. So I had all participants do that. And it turned out that compared to baseline, negative reappraisal, so thinking about negative aspects of the limerence object, and distraction, thinking about other things, decreased limerence intensity compared to baseline. From previous research, I expected positive reappraisal to increase love feelings, and so maybe limerence too, but it didn't. So that's definitely different for limerence than other types of love. So it did not change limerence intensity. And then both positive reappraisal, so thinking positively about the limerence object, and distraction made people feel less unpleasant compared to baseline. And negative reappraisal did not change how pleasant or unpleasant people felt. So, like I said, this is still very much in progress. I'm still analyzing the data and trying to interpret them. But so far, it seems like participants perceive most overlap between limerence and infatuation, addiction, and unrequited love. The data show that limerence can be very long-lasting, that it happens mostly outside of relationships, that it is often associated with a wish to be in a relationship with that person, but not always. That it oftentimes even happens outside of current relationships. So people are in a relationship with one person and feel limerence for someone else. That it's correlated both with infatuation and attachment intensity, and maybe even more so with infatuation or passionate love than attachment or companionate love. So I wonder if limerence is maybe the same as infatuation or passionate love, and it's just a different term for the same thing. It made people feel either unpleasant or pleasant, but not both. And it was associated with really frequent thinking about the limerence object, even more so than in other studies on other forms of love that I've done so far. Also, in a previous study that's now in press, people really enjoyed thinking about their beloved, like big time. And this sample is very different in that this thinking about the beloved really bothered their participants. So that's really different between different samples. And it also distracted them, which is the same as in my previous study. Most people wanted to experience less limerence, and my research showed that negative reappraisal and distraction can be used for that. And then positive reappraisal and distraction can also make people feel less unpleasant. So I think it's really important to educate people about this, because what's becoming clear about the conversation about limerence in limerence communities is oftentimes that people don't like this, they don't want it, but they feel like there's nothing they can do about it. And my research shows that you can use certain strategies. And so I hope we can let people know about this, and so they can use it to their advantage. And it may be clear that we need more scientific research to really understand what is limerence. Is it the same as other forms of love that have been studied extensively, or is it really a different type of love that we need to add to the repertoire, so that we can get a full understanding of love and limerence in particular? So I'm really grateful to David Staver, who is here today. I'm excited. This is the first time I'm seeing him on Zoom, but he was really the starter of this research because of his interest in limerence. You can find more information about my lab on the website and on Facebook, and my email, of course, if you have any questions. Thanks very much for your attention, and Adam for organizing, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Chuck's got a question.
I'm wondering, did you explore why they haven't pursued this relationship? Is it a relationship they tried to pursue and failed? Or is it maybe an inappropriate relationship, someone they're not supposed to pursue?
That's a great question. And no, I don't have data on that. So at least half the people said they were in a relationship with someone else right now. So that may be another reason why they didn't pursue a relationship. Yeah, great question. Although according to the original book about limerence, the desire for reciprocity is a key part of it, which is not the same as wanting to be in a relationship, but it's related to it, right? Yeah, good question.
Victor.
I have a question. Just a moment. I have the question regarding pleasant or unpleasant. You know that I know that many love feelings are ambivalent. how did you detect that either or? Maybe they have both. Is the research design actually admitted this ambivalence or not?
Yeah, that's of course a good suggestion. You know, mixed emotions are the idea that you can experience different types of emotions at the same time, even if they're very pleasant and very unpleasant at the same time. So that's why I asked them two questions. How unpleasant does it make you feel, ranging from not unpleasant at all to very unpleasant? And then a separate question about pleasantness. So how pleasant does it make you feel, not at all, very unpleasant, very pleasant? The reason I'm concluding that it's one or the other is because there was a negative correlation of negative 0.44, which suggests that those people that say they feel very unpleasant are then more likely to also say they feel not pleasant. Or if they say I feel very pleasant, then they will also say I feel not unpleasant. So that negative correlation is what makes me conclude it's not a mixed emotions.
Okay, likely is possible, but you know that did you try to detect any participants who actually responded yes to both?
So they definitely exist, right? That negative correlation wasn't -1.
So,
Yeah.
I think that would be good to actually to compute the variable when some participants responded yes to both. This may be the third combination.
Yeah, you mean just look at the numbers? How many people said both? How many people said neither? How many people said one or the other? Yeah, I can do that. Good suggestion. Thank you.
Marta.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra, for this talk and presentation. Really fascinating. I was just wondering over negative reappraisals. Now, what are your thoughts on this strategy, and how exactly do you ask participants to do it? And did you have any issues with your ethical IRB by asking people to think negatively about someone who they care for deeply? Just some your thoughts.
Yeah, great question. So no ethical issues there with my IRB. I've used this strategy in many different of my studies already. And in this particular study, I had them on Qualtrics. I'm actually looking it up. I had them briefly answer 10 questions, such as what is something stupid this person says? What is this person's bad habit? What is something gross this person eats? And so these were 10 questions that were designed to make people think about the stuff they don't like about this person. And I feel like you had another question, but I forgot about that. Did that answer your question already?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
Right, we might leave it there. I don't think there's any other questions. So thanks everyone. That concludes the first session. We will start the next session at 35 minutes past the hour. So that's not very long. And we'll get going. We'll learn a bit more about some other entities in the Love research community, and then a few more presentations. All right, see you all soon. All right, everyone, we'll just give another 30 seconds and then we'll hear from Laura, who's going to be talking about the Love Consortium.
Should I go ahead and share my screen,
Yeah,
Adam?
might as well. And get going if you're ready.
All right, cool. Don't look at my messy desktop. Okay, everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Great. Hi everyone, I'm Laura Kurtz. I'm a social psychologist and program manager for a group called the Love Consortium. I recognize many of your faces, so this is going to be old news for a lot of you. So hi everyone, nice to see you all. If we haven't yet met, again, I represent the Love Consortium for the purpose of this call. We're a group that's dedicated to advance, oops, sorry, went too far. That's what I get. A group dedicated to advancing the science of social connection, largely through the use of archived data. Now, I only have 5 minutes to do this little intro, so it's going to be quick. But I hope that it serves as just a very quick introduction and an invitation for you all. If you haven't yet joined us for an event or considered using one of our resources, to just check us out. Everything's free, so come on over. We're all about trying to help support research and support researchers around the world through collaborative resources. To date, we've been funded by the John Templeton Foundation, so big thanks to them. And we were founded in 2018 by Sarah Aljo at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in the US. We are very thankful to the people on this screen, as well as our original advisory board, for helping us to just set the direction, help us to identify priorities, and continue to extend the reach of what we do across the globe. That said, we're not just the board. We do represent a pretty decent sized community. We're thrilled to say that for our events, we have seen researchers from 51 countries, and I like to say and counting. We're really hoping to continue to fill in these gray countries. So if you know anyone in any of these, or if you yourself live in any of these great countries, hop on by to one of our events, please. We'd love to see that entire map teal in the coming years. So I sort of alluded to this just now, but how do we actually advance our mission? We do this in 3 primary ways. We host in-person and virtual events on topics pertaining to love, sometimes a little bit adjacent to love. We're hosting an event in November, actually a virtual event. So if you haven't seen that and you're interested, sign up on our website on love in the family. So familial love. We also have awarded various travel grants as well as research grants. We just recently awarded our first round of gratitude fellowships to 9 graduate students and 3 early career researchers to conduct research on gratitude using data posted to the Global Gratitude Dataverse, which I'll point at but won't focus on for the purpose of this talk, since you all are here about love, not gratitude. But we have had 2 cohorts of Love Fellows as well, using data from the Love Consortium Dataverse, which is our primary resource that we that really started it all. When Sarah first founded the Love Consortium, she realized that oftentimes what she had found when talking to researchers who study love or related constructs is that they'll collect these really rich, elaborate data sets that often include data from multiple members of a dyad, like dyadic data, or multiple members of group, friends, and include multiple lab sessions. And like her data sets themselves are massive, multiple lab sessions, video recorded data, psychophysiological data, biological samples, like diary studies. And they do all that. And it's so time consuming and it's so expensive to collect. And then they test like 3 hypotheses and then they move on to the next one. And so this like rich data set that has so many untapped variables and so much untapped potential, then sort of languishes on an external hard drive in the corner of their office. And so she thought, why are we doing this when we could be opening these data sets up to others who might not have the resources to collect those data, or who might be like, oh, you know what, I want to test this initial question, this idea that I have, but it's not at the point where I want to invest that much time. So she created the Love Consortium Dataverse. And any of this you can also find on our website. That's the loveconsortium.org. But I want to really quick give you a little glimpse of the Love Consortium Dataverse if you're not yet familiar with it. It's essentially this collaborative tool. Sarah likes to call it a matchmaking platform for researchers. So people who have data on love or social connection, and we define that very broadly, intentionally here, are welcome to describe those data. So you don't have to post your data outright. You just describe them. And those who are seeking data to test a research question can then search through the Dataverse. And if they find something that they think might be relevant to their needs, they can then reach out to the data owners and propose a collaboration. So it's really this collaborative tool that's free to use. The Love Consortium, like, we don't get anything from it. It's the data are still yours. We're not claiming ownership or anything. It's just a platform for you to describe your data and potentially spark some new collaborations. And to date, we do have 107 data sets from 68 contributors across 11 different countries. So again, I'd love to see that number a little bit bigger. But rather than like just show you the screenshot, which can only show you so much, I'm gonna swipe over. And this is actually the Dataverse here. So you can see, again, those 107 data sets. Within here, there is a Dataverse, which is a global gratitude Dataverse. That's what I mentioned earlier. But because we're love researchers, we're going to talk about the Love Consortium Dataverse. This was the original Dataverse. You can see here on the side that the great thing about the Dataverse is that we've created these customized metadata that ask questions that are most relevant to the researchers who are using our Dataverse. So those then can be used as filters. So when you're posting your data set description, you have a drop-down item that's like, does your data set include any commonly used love assessments? And then you have the ability to select those that it includes. And then in turn, folks who are searching can then filter the data sets by those specific metadata. So we have commonly used love assessments, population units. You can see a lot of dyadic data, which is really great. But not only dyadic data, also other population units. Different focal relationship types. So romantic might be most applicable to this group, but we do have other relationship types as well. And then methodologies as well. So say I'm interested in, I'm looking for romantic love data sets, and I really want to, I have a dyadic question that I want to address. I can then filter by those, and it pulls up 18 results, and I can scroll through. If I think something might be relevant, I can click into it, and this is where you can read more about the data set. And so I mentioned, you're really just describing your data set. You don't have to post your data outright. You're welcome to if you have IRB approval to do so and the data are de-identified, but you don't have to. But when I say description, this is what I mean. It's essentially like a simplified method section of a paper where you're describing who your participants were, what measures were included. People use different degrees of specificity here. So some people will put, will describe one paragraph, what their data set's like. Other people will write 5 to 6 paragraphs, very different. You'll see as you click through these. You can then also go down here to metadata, where again, that description shows up, but as well as our specific Love Consortium metadata, where you can see commonly studied constructs that they selected, more about the sample, the methodologies that were used, et cetera, et cetera. And you can also see what this person has specified as their collaboration desires and guidance. And so if you find something that you think is relevant, that you think would be a good fit for your question, you can then contact the data owner directly through the Dataverse, and it'll send them an email, and then you'll be able to chat from there. I know that's a super quick overview, but I have 1 minute, right? Or not even. So I'm going to go to the last, or here's a couple of examples of papers that have arisen from collaborations on the Dataverse. Check them out. Quite a range of topics covered. Really great. and get involved. Post your data set descriptions, search the Dataverse for relevant data, attend one of our events, they're free. And we're also hosting or starting this Global Ambassadors program. So if you're outside of the US, please sign up for that. Sandra, I know, is a content contributor in the past. If you want to contribute to our newsletter, that's also a way to get involved. But yeah, reach out, loveconsortium@unc.edu if you have questions. Super whirlwind chat intro to TLC, but that's us. And hope to see you at an event in the future.
Nice one. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah. Sorry, I went over. I was like, oh, I have a minute. No, I'm way over.
That's all right. That's all right. My presentation is going to be short, so I think we'll be on time. And so now we've just got a presentation from Viktor Karandashev at the International Institute of Love Studies. So I'll just get you to stop sharing your screen if you can. Thank you. Right, share sound screen too. Please just yell out if you can't hear this for some reason.
Dear participants of Love Research Info Symposium of 2024, here is a brief introduction to the International Institute of Love Studies. I will talk about who we are and what we do. Who are we and what is our purpose? And what is the mission of the Institute of Love Studies? The International Institute of Love Studies is an educational and scientific organization incorporated in the states of Michigan, USA. The Institute is a scholarly consortium of independent individuals and institutions worldwide. The Institute is a global community of scholars interested in the studies of love. It is a network of researchers, practitioners, labs, and programs from many disciplines interested in exploring love from diverse perspectives and various methodologies. The Institute showcased the recent research on love. The Institute also keeps up the good tradition and classic knowledge of love scholarship across times. The motto of the Institute understanding love through research-based knowledge. To briefly summarize who we are and what we do. First, the Institute provides opportunities for various forms of partnership and cooperation. Our mission is to connect, share, and exchange knowledge. Second, the Institute promotes international collaboration to explore love and relationship in the variety of their forms, types, contexts, and cultures. Third, the Institute provides the international resources for researchers from all over the world. The Institute strives to improve scientific literacy and cross-cultural knowledge among the general public in the field of love and relationships. The Institute recently organized the first international conference on love studies. It took place in January of 2024 in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria in Spain. It was a great success with more than 100 presenters from a wide range of disciplines, such as those you can see on this slide. Participants presented and discussed recent studies on love as personal experience and interpersonal relationship within historical, social, cultural, and interpersonal context. We have posted the selected presentation from the conference on the Institute YouTube channel. The Institute of Love Studies also manages several international resources for love researchers in a variety of fields. Two examples are the Diversity of Love Journal and the YouTube channels on love studies. The Diversity of Love Journal features the review articles on love and relationships across various cultures. The articles present research-based knowledge on love. The Institute also runs the YouTube channel, posting research presentations on love studies. In particular, we posted selected presentations from the conference on the Institute YouTube channel. The Institute is planning a few prospective projects as well. Among those are organization of regular international conferences, symposiums, and seminars on love studies. Then managing the projects of international publications on love research, and then continuing international networking of love researchers and providing opportunities for collaborative international projects on love studies. Questions and answers, please.
All right, so everybody can see the sorts of stuff I look at YouTube on. We don't have, we're running a bit late, so we might skip the questions now and just head on to the first presenter for this session, who is Gemma Werrett.
Thank you. My surname is slightly different in the comment. How's that? Can everyone see that all right?
Yes.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for sharing really interesting topics so far. And I hope I can equally contribute to your interests. In saying that, welcome to my presentation on love, health, and harmony, where I am looking at the link between health domains and relationship satisfaction in young adults experiencing romantic love. Just to clarify, this study is based on the early stages of romantic love or kind of passionate love, same kind of feelings. I love this saying which says, "I love you. It's as simple and as complicated as that." Before starting this honours project, I had never considered love or romantic love to be part of psychology. Love was a simple construct, but the more I read and researched, it has proven to be oh so complex at every level. And I'm sure those who have been in this field for a while really notice this. For this project, I was working with the most current definition of romantic love, which encompasses cognitive, emotional, behavioral, social, genetic, neural, and endocrine activity to serve as mate choice, courtship, sex, and pair bonding functions. It's what happens at the beginning of a relationship when you go a little bit crazy. You may have heard of rose-colored glasses or cloud nine. It's a period of time when you only feel strong, positive emotions towards your partner. My study is looking at the influence romantic love has on the relationship between domains of health-related quality of life, specifically mental health and social relationships, and relationship satisfaction. So mental health is a state of emotional, psychological, and social well-being, whereas social relationships are the bonds an individual has that interconnect them to their community, friends, and family. Relationship satisfaction is how an individual evaluates their romantic relationship as a whole. Does their relationship make them feel good? Probably a higher satisfaction to them. What we do know is that social relationships do affect relationship satisfaction. Noires and colleagues found 20% variance in marital satisfaction that was attributed to perceived social support. We also know that relationship satisfaction influences mental health. The prevalence of depressive symptoms increases by 22% depending on relationship quality. And finally, we know that mental health affects relationship satisfaction. Shahi saying that mental health is an important predictor of relationship quality. What we don't know is if these two health domains, mental health and social relationships, separately influence relationship satisfaction significantly when both are present, and how by adding romantic love into the mix, this may influence these current relationships. To test these gaps in the current research, I hypothesized that mental health would account for a significant amount of variance in self-reported relationship satisfaction over the effect explained by social relationships. Based on the previous research, I'm hypothesizing that these relationships will all be positively associated. For my study, I had the privilege of using secondary data sourced from the Romantic Love Survey. 769 participants from an original sample of 1,745 young adults in love with a romantic partner for less than 2 years was used. 2 years is indicative of early stage romantic love. This is the cloud nine or crazy feeling I was describing before. These participants are from 33 different countries, including North America, Europe, and Africa, with a high proportion of current students and a slightly higher proportion of males than females. The age of the participants ranged from 18 to 25, with an average age of 22 years. For my measures, the Passionate Love Scale is a self-report 30-item questionnaire designed to measure the intensity of romantic love experienced by an individual towards their romantic partner. Relationship satisfaction was measured in the Romantic Love Survey using a single item measure. Health domains were assessed using the Assessment of Quality of Life scale. Both social relationships and mental health have 3 questions each. A 5-point Likert scale was used to gather results for the predictor measures before being reverse coded for ease of interpretation. For the procedure, all measures were drawn from the Romantic Love Survey. Ethics approval was obtained from the ANU Human Research Ethics Committee following 2 rounds of revision. The survey was created and administered using Qualtrics. Participants were sourced using Prolific between October and December 2022. Consent was asked at the beginning and the end of the survey. Participants took an average of 16.38 minutes to complete the survey prior to data cleaning and were compensated for their participation. The hypothesis was tested using a 3-step hierarchical linear regression, as demonstrated now. Step 1 included the intensity of romantic love as the control. Step 2 added social relationships. And step 3 added mental health. As seen here, a hierarchical regression is a statistical method that adds variables in steps to see how each set of variables improves the explanation of the outcome. This helps to identify which variables contribute most to predicting the result. So to kick off my results, the adjusted R-squared value for the first step, which included the intensity of romantic love, accounted for 15.2% of the variance in relationship satisfaction, which was statistically significant. The addition of social relationships on the second step accounted for a significant 20.7% variance in relationship satisfaction for Model 2. From the result of change in R-squared, the model was significantly improved by adding the new predictor, with an additional 5.5% of variance in relationship satisfaction accounted for by social relationships in the second step. Including mental health on top of the intensity of romantic love and social relationships in the third step showed that the model accounted for a significant 22.2% of variance in relationship satisfaction. This means there was 1.7% of variance in relationship satisfaction accounted for in the third step, produced solely by mental health. Each predictor, including the control, made a unique, significant positive contribution to relationship satisfaction. These results support my hypothesis. We can also see here that outside of the control, social relationships is the strongest health predictor, even after accounting for mental health. So the take-home message of this study is that first and foremost, these findings are consistent with previous research that wasn't done within a romantic relationship. Romantic love may influence relationship satisfaction. Social relationships may influence relationship satisfaction. Mental health may influence relationship satisfaction. all in the context of a romantic relationship. But, there is a but, because this study is cross-sectional, we cannot draw causality. Other limitations include that participants come from weird countries, which stand for Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. And while all measures are valid, the quality of results, particularly for mental health, would benefit from a more clinical measure. We also relied on self-report of participants in love, which potentially brings in biased responses. Now, if you remember back to the definition of romantic love at the beginning, the main function is to form mate choice and reproduction, ultimately creating the continuation of the human species. What this study found is that strong social support and mental health may contribute to higher satisfaction in romantic relationships. This may lead to reinforcing pair bonding and can sustain those early stage romantic connections. This sustained satisfaction is crucial for long-term commitment, increasing the likelihood of family formation and reproduction over time. So understanding how social relationships and mental health affect relationship satisfaction may play directly into the purpose of romantic love. How cool. However, these results do leave me with several questions. If my model that encompasses romantic love and 2 health domains equate to 22.2%, what other factors may be playing a huge role in predicting relationship satisfaction in romantic relationships? Maybe community, trust, acknowledgement, commitment, sexual activity? Alternatively, how much extra variance would we get by adding the additional health domains, which are physical health and senses, and would each health domain continue to give significant independent variance to relationship satisfaction? I have no idea, and I guess someone else is going to have to do the research. Thank you all for your attention, and I'll now open it up for questions.
Thank you, Gemma. Chuck's got a question.
Just a comment. You want to know what other factors predict relationship satisfaction. I've done a study which predicts 77% of relationship satisfaction.
Amazing. That's incredible. That's a huge number.
Yeah, it's from a cross-cultural study, and it's in a book called Intimate Relationships Across Cultures, a comparative study.
Thank you very much for sharing.
All right, any other questions? Victor. Oh, sorry, you're on mute, Victor. We can't hear you.
Yes, I'm sorry, I think that you are too modest and too studentish when you try to say that no causation. You know that hierarchical regression analysis assume causation, even though do not prove. And you know that if there is no causation, it is just boring. You know that you still need to interpret what may affect. If no causation, it means that one variable can affect another instead can affect the first one. But you need to interpret somehow, otherwise it is less interesting. So just suggestion.
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, I'd like to agree, but unfortunately, because it's an honors project, I can't quite blatantly state things that it isn't exactly saying.
You know that actually you labeled already outcome variable and what independent variable. So you had this in the structure. So this means that there should be something like this.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, thanks very much, Gemma.
Thank you all.
Now we have Magda. Oh, and Gemma, feel free to go back to bed. I know it's 5 o'clock in the morning where you are.
So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna start. Hi, everybody. I'm Magda Martinez. I'm a PhD student at the University of Missouri St. Louis, currently working at the Neurocognition of Emotion and Motivation Lab. And today I'm presenting my research proposal called Comparing Romantic Love and Parasocial Love. So maybe some of you have heard before about this concept called parasocial love, or maybe not. So that's why I want to start my presentation by telling you the definition about what is parasocial love. So parasocial love is referring to having a crush on, falling in love with, or developing a romantic interest in media figures, despite having no reciprocal interaction. It could be any kind of media figure, like, for example, an actor, a singer, or a fictional character. And recently, there have been more studies related to parasocial love and how it has an important role in human social life in today's interconnected world. Even that we can see here in a study of 2021 that 60.6% of participants reported ever having a parasocial beloved. Even that we have these kind of studies that parasocial love is having a real good presence in nowadays, there is a problem. And the problem is that the difference and similarities between parasocial love and romantic love are poorly understood. Even that some people have reported that they have stronger feelings as a romantic love when they are feeling parasocial love. We don't have so much studies that they make this comparison. Also, there's something interesting is that there are not so many studies, or there's a lack of literature since the neuroscientific perspective. Mainly since the electroencephalography perspective, that is a technique in which we put like a cap on the participants, and the cap has some electrodes, and in that way we measure the electrical brain activity that the participant are having while they're making a task. For example, the most common task is just watching like a picture. So there are no electroencephalography studies related to parasocial love. And in these electroencephalography studies, there are something called event-related potential that are specific moments of these electroencephalography studies that are going to give us information related how the participant is processing the task. So, for example, we have some really good approximations, but related to romantic love. For example, of these ERP components, we have one called late positive potential, also known as LPP, that this LPP is obtained with a task called a standard passive viewing task that consists the participant is just sitting, watching a picture that in this study was of three conditions: the beloved, friend, and stranger. And we measure like the activity that the brain is having while they are watching these pictures. So if we see in this graphic on the right, here in the y-axis, we have the microvolts. It means the electrical activity of the brain. Above, we have negative activity, and below, we have positive activity. And in the x-axis, we have the time. So here, the 0 indicates the onset of the stimulus. So here we can see that approximately 300 milliseconds after the stimulus onset, there is going to be a separation of the beloved condition compared with the friend and stranger conditions that are these two here. So here, in this case, the beloved condition is going to give us more positive electrical activity compared with the friend and stranger. Also, here we can see in this graphic that now is above, that is like a representation of the scalp. Here we can see in this section that if we make like a ponytail, it will be exactly in that section. And more, the darker the color red is, it means that it has more positive electrical activity. So here is the way that the beloved is being processed. So, but okay, we understand this, but what is showing us like this activity? So this late positive potential is showing us motivated attention for emotional stimuli. So in this case of this study, the beloved condition showed to be more to the participant to be
paying more attention because of the motivation, because it's more emotional. It's a more emotional stimuli compared with the friend and stranger. So even that we have these really good approximations about how the romantic love is being processed in the brain, we don't have anything related to parasocial love, even if it will be like a really good and interesting perspective if the brain is also processing in the same way the parasocial love. In addition of this component, we have another component called the early posterior negativity, that it's called EPN, that this component is going to be represented in another section of the scalp that it's like above the ear, called the occipital scalp. So this component is going to emerge from a task called rapid serial visual presentation task, that is going to have the same three conditions, the beloved, friend, and stranger picture. But in this case, the difference with the previous task is that in this case, the pictures are going to pass really, really fast. So in this case, this component is showing us that there's early automatic attention for evolutionary relevant stimuli. So in this case, the beloved condition, it's being more, it's more an automatic attention for the participants that a friend and a stranger because it's more evolutionary relevant. In this case, also that we have these really good approximations, there's nothing related to parasocial love, and it will be also a really good perspective to understand how it's being processed, this component in the brain with this kind of love. Because, well, the media didn't appear at the beginning of the evolution of the brain. So it will be interesting, this comparison. So taking in account all this information about how the people are reporting to having parasocial love, that also there are some strong feelings, and that we have some really good approximations about how the brain is processing romantic love, here emerged like the objective of my study, that is to compare subjective feelings for an event-related potential responses to real-life love and parasocial love. And here we can see a picture about how this electroencephalography study is being done, that here we have like the cap that I mentioned before and the electrodes. So with this, remembering that it's a research proposal, I have my expectations that what will I get in this study. Is the first thing is related with the LPP component. Remember that is related to motivated attention. In this case, my expectation is that there will be no difference between how parasocial and romantic love is being processed in the brain. Then my second expectation is that related to the EPN component, like more evolutionary attentional stimuli. In this case, because the thing I mentioned that media didn't appear at the beginning of the evolution of the brain, I suggest that there will be a difference between how parasocial love and romantic love is being processed in the brain. And finally, there is something that I'm going to mention now in my methods, is that also I'm going to measure how scores related to love. So in this case, it will be no difference between how the parasocial love and romantic love is perceived in the participants. So now going to my proposal of methods, is that in my research for the participants, I'm going to recruit at least 25 participants. That their inclusion criteria, it will be like they need to be 18 years old or older. They need to have, they are going to self-report having a parasocial beloved and a real life beloved. And there have been some studies in which participants report having both kind of real loves at the same time. And also something important is that the married participants are going to have normal or corrected to normal vision, because as I mentioned before, the stimuli are pictures, so I don't want to have a bias about how the vision is being processing the pictures. And well, my procedure, the main thing in this case is going to be related with the electroencephalography activity. So I'm going to apply the same two tasks that I mentioned before to get the LPP component and the EPN component. And in this case, I'm going to add a new condition that is a picture of parasocial beloved. So here we have like a really good example that is Taylor Swift. Then, so we are going to have a picture for the parasocial beloved of each participant, a picture for the real life beloved for each participant, then also a picture of a friend for each participant, that this friend condition is going to help us to have a control for familiarity. And the last one is going to be a picture for a stranger for the participant, so we can have control for face processing. And in this case, a picture of the stranger is going to be match with the gender of the friend. So in that way, we don't have like a gender bias. And in addition of that, we are going to also measure the subjective feelings of the participant. So previous to my electroencephalography study, I'm going to apply some questions and 2 skills for the participants about their parasocial love and about their real life love. So in this case, I'm going to ask questions about their love feelings, and also I'm going to apply the infatuation and attachment skills and the parasocial love skill. And then I'm going to do the electroencephalography study. And after that, I'm going to apply the self-assessment mannequin test that we can see a picture here on the right, that in this case is going to be for each condition, for the parasocial love, real life love, the friend and stranger condition. So in that way, I can measure the balance, the arousal, the dominance of how the participants are feeling after watching or seeing the pictures and after this electroencephalography study. So, that will be all for me. Thank you so much for listening. And do you have any question? Oh, and here is my contact or my email.
Thank you, Magda. Fabio.
Thank you, Magda. It's very interesting what your research proposal. So I would like to ask some question about how the questionnaire about parasocial love, which kind of question they propose to the sample, to the participant, because can you have some sexual attraction or some kind of feelings of being with this person? So I would like to know which kind of question this questionnaire asks, because I never heard about this questionnaire.
Yeah, so this questionnaire also asks like both things that you mentioned. There are some items related to sexual attraction and some items related to feelings. So I think it's also based of this passionate love skill that some of you have mentioned before, but it was adapted in a way that any kind, like it will be asked in a way that the participants will answer them, taking into account or considering or thinking about their parasocial love. So they are asking things like, I feel attracted to, like they put only like a space or an X, and they before that they mention like, this is going to be a real, like you need to put in that X or in that line like the name of the character that you are thinking on. And also it's a Likert type scale, so in that way they can have these skills measured.
Okay, thank you. I have a second question, Magda.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking out loud, because I'm thinking if you comparing people that have are in couple with a real partner, and then you test. So do you expect some results in some? I think you are already expecting something in your EEG data. And just a suggestion, look at the literature about imagery, because the sample you are, the kind of love you are investigating, the parasocial love, is something that where there is a lot of imagery, because it's only virtual love. So people, I think there is an article published 2 years ago, I don't remember the authors now, but they study how much people, they were studying people that were scammed. So romance scam, people that were in love with someone which was only virtually knowledge, so they never met the person. And the fact that there is a lot of imagery, were changing some electrophysiological outcomes. So just check at that, because maybe it can help you in just to design your experiment.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm gonna look at that.
Do you have an expectation how is the data is going?
Oh, I am just starting this research proposal. I haven't gotten any data.
Okay.
Victor.
I strongly support this line of research conceptually. And a couple of comments. You know that the study of parasocial love quite extensive. And in my book, Cultural Typology of Love of 2022, there is section about parasocial love, and there are quite extensive research. And second, I strongly support that romantic love is similar to parasocial, because the key definition, the key feature of romantic love is idealization. And actually, we see in idealized way, and parasocial love also the same way. So they have a lot in common. So I strongly support. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Magda. Now we might move on to Shafali. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name.
Oh, you did well. Shafali is correct.
Excellent.
Awesome. So just give me a second. I'm actually still quite sleepy, so I'll be able to see my slides.
Yes.
Great. So just a second. Sorry, I'm actually having some troubles myself.
It's just gotten very small.
Yeah, my apologies. Is that better?
No. That's better. So we can see that.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll start. My name is Shafali, and my research was based on exploring attachment styles as the moderator between emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction. As you can see here in the graph, Relationships Australia found that about 60% of people chose their partner as the most important person in their lives. This tells us that people value their romantic relationships. This could be as romantic relationships provide a sense of belonging while also satisfying the need for emotional, physical, and psychological intimacy. Therefore, I'm concerned with intimacy, which is one of the three components of love according to the triangular theory of love. Hence, in this study, the variables of interest are emotional intimacy as the predictor, attachment styles as the moderator, and relationship satisfaction as the outcome variable. I'll elaborate on each of these, starting with relationship satisfaction. Relationship satisfaction, which is defined as an individual's assessment and interpretation regarding the current situation of their romantic relationship. In simple words, it reflects how happy or unhappy people are with their partner or within their relationship. Now, why is relationship satisfaction important? Because people who are satisfied in their relationship experience greater self-esteem and have stronger sense of belonging, as well as increased overall well-being and life satisfaction. That said, romantic relationship dissolution is associated with increased psychological distress, which can result in adverse consequences like depression, substance misuse, PTSD, anxiety, and diminished self-esteem, ultimately decreasing life satisfaction. An important factor influencing romantic relationship satisfaction is emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy can be defined as the closeness and interdependence of partners. Well, the two important components of developing and maintaining emotional intimacy are self-disclosure and responsive support. Self-disclosure meaning communicating thoughts, feelings, and emotions to one another. And responsive support refers to the extent to which an individual feels understood, validated, and cared for by their partner. Therefore, when a partner responds in a way that makes one feel recognized and valued, It fosters emotional connection, trust, and deeper intimacy, and ultimately has the potential to enhance relationship satisfaction. Emotional intimacy is a key element of healthy relationships and is essential for fostering connection. Now that we know that, without it, we may experience feelings of isolation, loneliness, and disconnection from the people in our lives. Therefore, understanding one's emotions, practice active listening, being vulnerable, developing empathy, and communicating openly and honestly are all crucial skills in building emotional intimacy. That said, emotionally intimate relationships have the potential to increase happiness and overall well being, whereas lack of emotional intimacy is linked to poor relationship quality and even relationship dissolution. Now, let's finally look at attachment styles, which is our potential moderator. The attachment theory states that the fulfillment of children's expectations of their carers' attentiveness and accessibility can impact their mental perception of themselves and others, which then goes on to develop into schemas of understanding for relationships and can predict their attachment styles in adulthood. Well, as Maddie and Rogers has emphasized, attachment styles influences one's experience of romantic love. The attachment styles we are considering are secure and anxious. Securely attached individuals find it relatively easy to get close to people. These individuals experience positive emotions, have high empathy, and healthy romantic relationships. Conversely, anxiously attached individuals can constantly be worried about their relationship ending or overthink about what could go wrong within their relationship, hence experiencing lower psychological well-being. So far, we know that emotional intimacy can be a facilitator of relationship satisfaction. For instance, couples who experience higher emotional intimacy report greater relationship satisfaction. Additionally, attachment styles influence compassion, adaptability, and trust, ultimately enhancing emotional intimacy. It is also known that secure attachment fosters emotional intimacy, while anxious attachment may hinder it. Now, although past literature has attempted to understand the relationship between emotional intimacy, attachment styles, and relationship satisfaction, no study has yet investigated these three variables together while also studying the moderating effects of attachment styles. Therefore, to bridge the gap, the current study aimed to investigate the relationship between emotional intimacy, attachment styles, and relationship satisfaction, and whether attachment styles have a moderating effect. Based on the past literature, we predicted that emotional intimacy would be positively and significantly correlated with relationship satisfaction. Secondly, emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction would vary significantly between secure and anxious individuals, and we thought that secure individuals would have higher scores on both emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction compared to the anxious individuals. Lastly, we hypothesized that the relationship between emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction would be moderated by the participants' attachment style. Now let's look at how we conducted this study. Participants took part in an anonymous online questionnaire provided by Qualtrics, and the link to the questionnaire was distributed through several social media platforms, community centers, and libraries. After providing informed consent, participants then completed 3 sets of questionnaires as shown here, namely a adult attachment scale, the emotional intimacy scale, and relationship assessment scale, as the name suggests. They were used to identify and assess people and participants in their attachment styles, emotional intimacy, and relationship satisfaction. As shown here, all scales and subscales had high to moderate internal consistencies, which was considered satisfactory for further analysis. In the final analysis, the responses of 193 participants were analyzed, from which 68% were female, 28% were male, and only 4% were non-binary. As we can see here, we had 54% participants in the anxious category and 46 participants in the secure category. Well, upon conducting the correlational analysis, we found that relationship satisfaction and emotional intimacy were positively correlated, which supports the study's first hypothesis. Furthermore, both close and depend subscales portray moderate positive associations with emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction both. Lastly, attachment styles, secure or anxious, were negatively and significantly correlated with emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction. Well, here are the results of the Mann-Whitney test, which were used to analyze the differences between the attachment groups. The results reveal significant differences between secure and anxious attachment groups for both emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction, as the mean differences indicate. Also, the rank biserial correlation of 0.334 suggests a medium effect size, therefore indicating that being securely attached is associated with higher levels of emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction compared to being anxiously attached. Well, this supports our hypotheses. To explore the moderating effects, we aimed to test how adult attachment styles moderate the relationship between emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction. The analysis revealed that emotional intimacy and attachment styles collectively explain a significant portion of the variance in relationship satisfaction, as well as showed significant main effects. Therefore, both emotional intimacy and attachment styles each independently contributed to relationship satisfaction. However, contrary to our initial hypotheses, the interaction between emotional intimacy and attachment styles was found to be non-significant. Well, our findings showed that emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction are strongly connected, meaning those who experience higher emotional intimacy report greater relationship satisfaction. This is consistent with the past research, which highlights the connection, self-disclosure, and responsiveness contributes significantly to fostering satisfaction. We also found significant differences in relationship satisfaction and emotional intimacy between individuals with secure and anxious attachment styles. Securely attached individuals reported higher levels of satisfaction and intimacy, which aligns with the attachment theory. However, it's interesting to note that anxiously attached individuals also display positive emotions and attitudes towards emotional intimacy, suggesting a form of resilience. This means that despite their fears, they seek closeness and validation from their partners. Interesting, the study found no evidence that attachment styles moderate the relationship between emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction, meaning the emotional intimacy remains crucial for relationship satisfaction across different attachment styles. Moving on to the limitations and implications. First, the adult attachment scale categorizes attachment styles, which risks misclassifying individuals, especially those near the boundaries between categories. This affects the accuracy of attachment style assessments. Importantly, future studies should shift towards continuous measurements of attachment styles rather than the categorical ones to improve accuracy and reassess if attachment styles moderate the relationship between emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction. Additionally, avoidant individuals were excluded due to the small sample size, limiting the generalizability of our studies. Avoidant individuals exhibit unique relationship patterns, and their exclusions prevents a full understanding of how their attachment style affects emotional intimacy. Therefore, future research should ensure a larger and more diverse sample, especially to include avoidant individuals. Lastly, we only looked at one partner's perspective in this study, which limited our ability to understand the mutual dynamics between couples. Future studies should adopt dyadic approaches that capture both partners' perspectives, as it could improve a deeper understanding of the constructs between partners. Lastly, this study explored the significant relationship between emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction, highlighting the importance of emotional intimacy across attachment styles. While attachment styles did not moderate the relationship between emotional intimacy and relationship satisfaction, the findings emphasize the universal importance of communication, empathy, and trust. Therefore, strengthening emotional intimacy through these elements can help individuals build deeper and more fulfilling connections in their personal and romantic relationships. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Shefali. Do we have any questions? You might not be able to answer this one. So intimacy is one component of love according to Sternberg's model. Is it possible that if you looked at passion and commitment, that you might find secure attachment style being a moderator?
Yes, definitely. And I also think if I had taken all three of the components of love, I could find a difference, but because it was an honest thesis, I was limited. But that is a great suggestion. Maybe for my master's, who knows?
All right. Victor's got a question.
Yes, Victor.
Sorry, we can't hear you again, Victor.
Sorry, I think that is related to Adam's question that what about emotional and empathy? Do you distinguish between empathy and emotional empathy? What other type of empathy we may consider?
So intimacy. So there could be there's different types of intimacies like sexual intimacy, which could also be considered as emotional intimacy, and sexual intimacy go hand in hand to predicting relationship satisfaction. That could definitely be up for another study. But yeah, that is a great suggestion. And there's so much more to emotional intimacy and the components of intimacy that predict relationship satisfaction, that digging deeper into it would give us different results.
Would you agree that emotional intimacy is the same as intimacy in Sternberg scale?
Similar, not exactly the same though. Because the sort of intimacy, emotional intimacy that I have considered is just more in terms of talking to their partner and building trust and building a connection.
Yeah, I think the operational definition may be important in all these distinguishing.
Yes,
Okay.
you're absolutely
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Shefali. Now I think it's me. And Shefali, you can go to bed now too if you want. I know it's 5:37 in the morning where you are. All right, hopefully you can all see that. So I'm going to talk to you about a paper I've been working on with Marta Koval, Fabio Canasagadou, and Philip Kavanagh that is currently under review at the Journal of Affective Disorders, called SSRI Use is Not Associated with the Intensity of Romantic Love, Obsessive Thinking About a Loved One, Commitment, or Sexual Frequency in a Sample of Young Adults Experiencing Romantic Love. So I have the obligatory sides specifying what sort of love I'm talking about. I call it romantic love. It's that thing that happens at the beginning of a romantic relationship where you go a little bit crazy and think your partner is the best thing ever. It's commonly associated with the early stages of a romantic relationship, but can happen in the absence of a romantic relationship in something called unrequited love, and can rarely sometimes last many years, decades, or even a lifetime. Some psychologists call it passionate love, and lay people often refer to it as being in love or falling in love. There is a biological definition of this type of love. Bode and Kushnick defined it as a motivational state that's typically associated with a desire for long-term mating with a particular individual. It occurs across the lifespan and is associated with distinctive cognitive, emotional, behavioral, social, genetic, neural, and endocrine activity in both sexes. Throughout much of the life course, it serves mate choice, courtship, sex, and pair bonding functions, and it can best be described as a suite of adaptations and byproducts that arose sometimes during the recent evolutionary history of humans. So SSRIs, what are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors? They're a commonly used class of psychotropic medication, most notably used to treat depression, but also anxiety and a range of other ailments. They work by reducing reabsorption of serotonin into neurons, and as a result, increase intracellular serotonin levels. They do have downstream impacts upon the dopamine system. They are one of the most commonly prescribed medications on the planet. In 2007, Fisher and Thompson proposed a theory that argued that SSRI use negatively impacts romantic love. They suggested that the primary effects of SSRIs reduce obsessive thinking. They also suggested that the side effects of SSRIs, including emotional blunting, reduce the intensity of romantic love, and sexual dysfunction, another side effect of SSRIs, negatively impact romantic love as well. But the theory has never been tested in people experiencing romantic love. There have been 2 studies looking at SSRI use or antidepressant use and love in romantic relationships, but not specifically romantic love as I defined it. So to test their theory, we had 4 hypotheses. We believe that if the theory is true, SSRI use would be associated with less intense romantic love, less frequent obsessive thinking, less commitment, and lower frequency of sex. We used data from the Romantic Love Survey 2022, which is a study of young adults from 33 different countries who are all self-identified as being in love with a romantic partner. So either dating, committed relationship, or married or de facto. And that map just shows where participants are from. As you can see, mostly from North America, Europe, and South Africa. In the end, we used a sample of 810, of which 48% were female. We only included people who had been in love for less than 24 months, because 2 years is a commonly cited length of time that early stage or prototypical romantic love lasts, rather than long-term romantic love. And we only included those who scored above 130 on the passionate love scale, because we wanted to make sure they were actually experiencing romantic love. In the end, that adjustment only excluded about 25 people, so there's still plenty of variance in the data to look at. And in the end, we found that almost 10% were using SSRIs, which aligns roughly with OECD estimates of SSRI prescription. So we had 7 measures. SSRI use was measured just by asking participants, are you currently taking SSRIs? We didn't ask about dosage. We didn't ask about how long they had been taking it. We didn't ask about brand. We also had biological sex, and we just included females and males. There was 1 intersex participant that we excluded to facilitate the use of biological sex as a variable. We also had a variable assessing mental health problems, which was item 11 from the Assessment of Quality of Life 4 Domains questionnaire. And basically anybody reporting moderate or extreme anxiety, worry, or depression was classified as having mental health problems. Then we had 4 measures associated with romantic love. They were the intensity of romantic love measured by the Passionate Love Scale. The Passionate Love Scale is the most commonly used measure of the intensity of romantic love in biological and psychological research. Obsessive thinking about a loved one, we basically just asked, modeled on Langeslag et al.'s questionnaire, what percentage of working hours do you spend thinking about your loved one? And responses could be on a scale of 0 to 100. Commitment, which was measured by the commitment subscale of the Triangular Love Scale 15, although we used a 9-point response format instead of the recommended 5-point response format. And the frequency of sex, we just asked participants, how many times per week do you have sex with your partner? Sex is whatever you take it to mean. So to test the hypothesis, we undertook a binary logistic regression where the outcome variable was SSRI use, and the predictors were biological sex, mental health problems, intensity of romantic love, obsessive thinking, commitment, and frequency of sex. And here are some descriptive statistics. So as you can see, 76 participants were using SSRIs. And if you have a look in the top row, the correlations of SSRI use with all the other variables, the 4, 5, 6, and 7 represent our romantic love variables, and none of them are significantly correlated, which doesn't bode well for the hypothesis. So we undertook the binary logistic regression, and we found that being a male was negatively and significantly associated with SSRI use. Mental health problems was significantly and positively associated with SSRI use. But when we had a look at the 4 romantic love related variables, the odds ratios were all pretty close to 1, and none of them were significant. So what are the implications of our study? Our study provides no evidence that SSRIs affect romantic love. It is possible that some people taking SSRIs may have their romantic love affected, through emotional blunting or sexual dysfunction, but none of our hypotheses were supported. And this suggests that SSRIs do not generally negatively impact romantic love. The other thing this study does is it just provides more evidence that the mechanisms that regulate obsessive thinking in romantic love are not the same as an obsessive compulsive disorder. Since 1998, people have speculated that the mechanisms involved in obsessive thinking about a loved one and intrusive thoughts in obsessive compulsive disorder are similar or the same mechanisms. And there's been growing evidence since about 2008 that this is not the case. And I think this study should probably be the final death knell in that theory. Thank you. Any questions? Victor.
Sorry, this is me again. You know that I would like to clarify the terms. You know that what is outcome variables? I know that there are independent variables and dependent variables, and I assume that actually dependent variables and outcome variables are the same, and independent variables are predictors. And initially, I thought that these should be different relations. So I think that if the term outcome is not suitable or not.
So you're correct. Outcome and dependent variables are similar, conceptually similar, and independent variable and predictor variables are conceptually similar. Generally, the terms independent variable and dependent variables are only used in experimental designs, and there's a tendency to refer to predictor and outcome variables in cross-sectional studies that aren't experimental in nature.
But you know that in this case, actually, the wording like SSRI affect romantic love. This means that SSRI is independent. Otherwise, should be a romantic love affect SSRI. So I think that this causes confusion.
I understand what you're saying, and I can see why there's a bit of confusion, because if we were inferring causality, which we probably can do in this study, the fact is the regression doesn't assume directional causality one way or the other. So while it would sound nicer to call SSRI use predictor variables and have all the other variables as outcome variables, just the nature of the design of the study required that we have in binary logistic regression one outcome variable.
Yeah, because actually I had impression that romantic love actually affect taking SSRI, but it is different. So that makes sense to clarify not just technically, but also conceptually.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, it doesn't look like there's any other questions, so we will move on to the final presentation for tonight for me, or today for you guys. Fabio. I think we've lost Fabio. Let's give Fabio another couple of minutes to see if he comes back. I think he was having technical issues. Here we go. He's come back.
Sorry about that, but my laptop is new, so I couldn't, no, but because the university bought for me, and I couldn't share my my slides, so I had to accept that I had to leave. Anyway, so nice to meet you to everybody. I'm Fabio. I'm associate professor at University of Nîmes in France. So can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm presenting a study which I participated as co-author and alongside with Adam Bod, Severi Luotto, Marta Cowell, myself, and Philip Kavanagh. And today will be discussing the topic about sexual orientation and romantic love. I'm going quick on the definition because are the same that Adam was mentioning before. So my study is basing on the definition of romantic love as a motivational state, including all the lifespan involving distinctive cognitive, emotional, and behavioral activities. Why is important to run this study on sexual relationship? It's crucial because in the recent year, 36 countries have legalized same-sex marriage, but there is still a gap in empirical research linking sexual romantic love and sexual orientation and romantic love. So our study aims to explore how romantic love manifests across different sexual orientations, focusing on key aspects such as love intensity, obsessive thinking, and commitment. Our research questions are: how does romantic love manifest differently across sexual orientation? And are these significant difference in the intensity of romantic love and obsessive thinking about a partner, level of commitment, and frequency of sexual activity? So I wanna specify that our study is an exploratory study. So we conducted without a priori predictions because of the nature of exploratory nature of the study. The source are exactly the same of Adam mentioned before of a Romantic Love Survey 2022. And this is our participants. So we included participants who were in love for less than 24 months and who score under 30 on passionate love scale. And we excluded participants that were identifying as other in terms of sexual orientations and those reporting no sexual activity. So we included only people that were heterosexual, homosexual, and bisexual. We measure various aspects of romantic love. So the intensity of romantic love was assessed using the PLS. And commitment was evaluated with commitment subscale of triangular love scale. And we also measured the sexual activity, asking people how many times they were having sex per week. The analysis, to analyze the data, we calculate descriptive statistic for each sexual orientation group. We also perform correlation and calculate effect size using Cohen-D. It's important to note that we did not calculate the p-value in order to avoid type 1 error, given the exploratory nature of this study. So here are the results. As you can see, we found that when we looked at the correlation between different measures related to romantic love, we discovered that the intensity of love has a strong connection with both obsessive thinking and commitment. And this pattern holds true for both female and male. So in simple terms, when people feel more intense romantic feelings, they also tend to think about their loved ones more obsessively and show greater commitment to them. However, there was something interesting regarding the frequency of sexual activity, because as you can see, we found that this measure was only weakly linked to the other variable, and even more so in the male sample. as you can see from the correlations. And this is in line with a study that we recently published with my colleagues, and Adam and Marta are present here, that suggesting that sexual desire and is distinctive system that is one component of romantic love. In our analysis of female participants, so here the female data, we found that small effect size were present for most of the variable, suggesting that this aspect of romantic love show only a minor differences across sexual orientation. However, for frequency of sex, we identified an intermediate effect size with a significant finding indicating that homosexual female engage in sexual activity less frequently than both heterosexual and bisexual females. And this highlights a notable difference in how sexual activity is experienced among this group, suggesting that sexual behavior may vary in terms of sexual orientation, even with the context of romantic love. Now focusing on the male participant, we discover that bisexual males reporting falling in love significantly more times than heterosexual males, with a moderate effect size. As you can see here, we have a negative D, suggesting that heterosexual were falling less. So these results highlight the complexity of romantic love among men, and of course, they will need more future investigation. So some implication about this study. So while a small difference in love outcome exists among various sexual orientation, this underscores the universality of romantic love. However, some difference of intermediate magnitude indicate that neither for further research to understand meaningful variation based on sexual orientation sex, and further studies should also include larger and maybe more representative sample in order to explore a wider range of of love outcomes. So thank you very much for listening, and I will be open to any question.
Thank you, Fabio. Do we have any questions? Sandra's got a question.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting study. I was wondering if the difference in sexual frequency between homosexual women and bisexual and heterosexual women could be explained by a higher sex drive of men than women. So if there's a man in the relationship, am I saying that right? Then the couple has more sex than if it's two women. So if it's two men and a woman, they have more sex than if it's just two women. I don't know if that can explain the findings.
Yeah, so you meaning because in terms of homosexuality, so if you take homosexuality between two girls, is less than two men? Right. Is that yeah, there is extensive literature about that. There are many theories behind. We don't really know why, but definitely yes, men has more frequency of sex than women. Theories behind are because of stereotypes, gender stereotypes. So girls usually interiorize more gender stereotypes about sex, so they see sex as something that is not really related to girls. And there are many theories that this is something that I think in future study they have to see if in the young society like Canada, where gender and gender stereotypes are always going less and less perceived. If young people like 17, 18 girls, they will has the same performance as old lady in other countries. Will be something interesting, because now even talking about sexologists in Canada, they were noticing that even girls, that they were admitting more masturbation practice that before wasn't like that. So yeah, maybe it will be interesting if this gap will be less now. I don't know.
Can I just add something to that, Fabio? So
Yeah.
In the cross-sectional data set, we didn't include a variable asking participants the sex of their romantic partner, but we did in wave 2. So we got some indication of what proportion of bisexual females and males had a same-sex or different-sex partner. And we tended to find that bisexual men acted more like homosexual men than heterosexual men, but bisexual females acted more like heterosexual females than they did homosexual females. So you're probably right. We just didn't have enough of a sample to investigate that in any meaningful way. Victor. Sorry, Victor, we can't hear you again.
Sorry. You know that my comments just again the same, the interesting idea, interesting relationship, but you know the deficiency of comparison, 350 and 18, it is, I don't know, I know that statistics can do anything, but I think that they are quite uncomparable. There should be some more statistically comparable sample to do some conclusive. As a pilot study, yes, but furthermore, I think there should be really a representative sample of both, of different categories. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Victor. I totally agree with you. This is why we left our exploratory nature of our study, and this is why we didn't calculate p-value, because we didn't really wanted to speculate about that. But definitely the future study, they must engage more people, because now I think even accessing to LGBT communities is a little bit more easier, maybe. So yes, definitely we will, and even including different sexual orientation. We only took bisexual and homosexual, so maybe seeing even different kind of
Okay,
sexual
thank you.
orientation. Thank you too.
All right, everyone. So that looks like the end of the symposium. Thank you very much to all the presenters and to Victor and Laura for coming and talking about their entities. We will go away and select a student presentation award winner and be in touch in the next day or so. This has been recorded. So if you're a subscriber to the loveresearch.info monthly update, you will get a link to that in the next monthly update. Otherwise, we're going to do this again next year. So hopefully we'll see you all again then. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.